For those of you that watch my HBO Max video, you may remember me saying that Looney Tunes Cartoon was the show that I was most excited for on HBO Max. I said that it looked like a return to form and that it might be just as good as the originals. Boy, was I naive. While some of the shorts are actually really good, so many of them are just bad and do not even hold up when compared to the originals. One of the main issues behind this show is the very bizarre choice of showrunner and directors. The executive producer on this show is Peter Braungart, who's worked on such classics like Uncle Grandpa and Secret Mountain Fort Awesome.
I'm gonna go boom boom.
Allegedly, he was at lunch with one of the creative executives at Warner Brothers, and she was pitching him a show, and he said, yeah, I don't really care about that one. What I want to make is Looney Tunes. So instead of Warner Brothers giving one of their biggest franchises to someone that they knew would handle it with care, they gave it to some guy that just decided that he wanted it. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be giving my biggest IP to a guy whose last show had a main character with a butt for a head. But Peter Braungart got the job, and he brought along some of his friends that worked on Uncle Grandpa with him to help. The cartoons are worked on by a variety of directors, but the three main ones, Kenny Pittenger, Ryan Kramer, and David Gimhill, each worked on 5 cartoons. By far the best cartoons come from David Gimhill, who worked on Gravity Falls, Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and the new Mickey Mouse cartoons. All of his previous work is great, and you can see the shift in quality while watching his cartoons, which are some of the better ones, like Harm Wrestling, Fleece and Desist, and Buzzard School. Kramer and Pittenger, on the other hand, are not of the same quality. Kenny Pittenger has worked on shows like Uncle Grandpa and Billy Dilly's Super Duper Subterranean Summer, which have less pleasing art styles and more random for the sake of being random senses of humor. This leads to a more childish and gross-out style of humor in his cartoons, which makes them less appealing to watch. While some of Ryan Kramer's cartoons are okay, the quality of his work is closer to Pittenger's than to Gimhill's. Ryan Kramer has also worked on Uncle Grandpa as well as the Ben 10 reboot, which everyone loves. This is no doubt some of the better work of Pittenger and Kramer, but there is room for improvement, and I hope for the next season they either get some better directors or let Gimhill direct more shorts, or at least have a hand in all the cartoons. For the character designs, Braungart brought on Jim Soper, who's an artist on Instagram. Most of Jim Soper's art reflects the golden age of animation, and you can see the quality of his work in the character designs. One of the best things about this show is the designs of the classic characters. While the designs are changed, they all look fantastic, and they look much better than what Warner Brothers went with in the new Looney Tunes. Most of the characters' designs are reminiscent of their later appearances in Looney Tunes cartoons, but some are closer to their original appearances. The designs are a sort of mix of the old, rougher style of animation and the new, rounder and smoother style that most modern cartoons go with, which leads to a very interesting mix. The characters' personalities also reflect their original appearances, with Bugs Bunny being more of a troublemaker than a wisecracking rabbit, and Daffy Duck being more of a goofball than a loser. While it is cool seeing some of the more obscure characters like Sam Sheepdog, Ralph Wolf, and Gossamer, they could have done a lot more. There are so many cartoons pairing Bugs with Elmer Fudd and Daffy with Porky, yet there are so many popular characters that went unused, so I wonder why they didn't use them just for some more variety. They could have put Bugs with Taz, Marvin the Martian, or even Cecil Turtle just for some more variety, but none of those famous characters appeared. There weren't any Foghorn Leghorn or Pepe Le Pew cartoons, and besides the one Sam Sheepdog short, there weren't any cartoons or even independent gags based on smaller characters like Hubie and Birdie or Mark Antony and Pussyfoot. I mean, I didn't expect cartoons based on either of these pairings, but with so many cartoons being so similar, it would have been nice for just at least one short based on these characters just to break it up a little bit. Another issue is that some of the original character designs are really bad. They don't feel like they fit in at all, and it seems like they'd be more natural in a Ren and Stimpy or even Uncle Grandpa environment. But the main issue is just one that's hard to pinpoint. I don't know if it's the animation or the writing or what, but it just doesn't seem like these have as much heart. Looney Tunes Cartoons isn't up to the quality of the originals, but it's also not different enough to be enjoyable. You'll just watch it and say, man, I wish I was watching the originals. It seems as if it's trying too hard to imitate the original cartoons, which leads to many of the gags and storylines being very similar. Most of the Bugs Bunny cartoons are basically the exact same as some of the shorts from the original Looney Tunes with very little differences. So when you watch a short with Bugs and Gossamer like Big League Beast where Bugs ends up in Gossamer's castle and Gossamer tries to kill him, it feels like you're just watching a lesser version of the original. Why not just go watch Hair Raising Hare instead and have a much better time? While I may be sounding negative, this is because I'm comparing it to some of the greatest animation ever put on paper, and I was not expecting it to be up to that quality, but I expected something a little better than what we got.
Ooh, fruit gum, my favorite fruit. Ow.
Warner Brothers released a 1.5-minute short on YouTube about a year ago called Dynamite Dance, and it was amazing. There was almost no dialogue, and it was just Elmer trying to hunt Bugs Bunny. The gags were funny, it had the classical music background, and it felt like I was watching one of the classic cartoons. Sadly though, Dynamite Dance is better than anything you find in this series, and for some reason they didn't even include that short, even though it's the best one. But does that mean there's nothing of value in this series? Of course not. That's why I'm going to go through each short and give you my thoughts and tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. Season 1 consists of 10 episodes, and each episode has at least 2 cartoons, and some have a short in between the 2. I'm not going to be talking about most of the mini cartoons because some of them are pretty funny, and it would just be me describing the joke as I don't have much to say about it since they're only like 45 seconds to a minute. But the first short of the series is Curse of the Monkey Bird. This is about Porky Pig and Daffy Duck going on an Indiana Jones style adventure trying to claim the treasure from the lair of the monkey bird. It's honestly a pretty strong start. One of the first jokes in this short is a cutaway gag, which really scared me as to the quality of the rest of the series, but I think it was the only one in the whole show. There are some good visual gags, and it's one of the more memorable cartoons out of the series. It also feels a lot higher budget when compared to some of the later cartoons. Before we talk about the next cartoon, I want to bring something up that a lot of people have complained about. When creating this series, Warner Brothers decided not to show any gun violence as to better reflect society today. This means characters that are most famous for having guns, like Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd, were not going to have them in this series. This is a big hurdle the writers had to get over, because a character like Yosemite Sam's defining trait is that he's trigger happy, and Elmer Fudd is known for being a hunter, and you have to have a gun to be trigger happy or to be a hunter. In more recent Looney Tunes installments, the characters also haven't been using guns, but that's more due to the fact that the tone of the show is wildly different from the original cartoons. Yosemite Sam lived in a suburban neighborhood, and he didn't need his guns while he was outside cutting his grass, and Elmer Fudd only talked about how much he loved grilled cheese sandwiches, and I think he wanted to do more than just eat them.
Grilled cheese, if you please.
For the most part, the writers did do a pretty good job of using these characters while also distancing them from their guns. In some of these episodes, you see Yosemite Sam not using guns, and you don't even think about it because it doesn't make sense for him to have a gun in that situation. However, there are some shorts where it would make a lot more sense for them to have a gun, and if you're a fan of the classic cartoons, it really takes you out of the series to see Yosemite Sam not firing his guns. One of the shorts where that's an issue is the second short of the series, Arm Wrestling. This follows the classic Bugs Bunny meets Yosemite Sam in a saloon and they feud formula. But since he is a cowboy in this particular cartoon, it does feel like Yosemite Sam not having his gun took away from some of the possible jokes. And you can tell that they were gags where they wanted to hurt Yosemite Sam, but instead of using gun, they just used TNT. This short was pretty funny, but I don't think it was good as some of the later ones. In episode 2, you start off with Big League Beast, which I've kind of already touched on. It's basically the exact same cartoon as Hair Raising Hair and Water Water Every Hair. Bugs ends up in the mad scientist lair, Gossamer goes after Bugs, Bugs tries to trick him in order to get out with his life. Everything looks the same as the original Gossamer cartoons, and it just feels like you're watching a lesser version of Hair Raising Hair. It seems as if the creators of the show are trying so hard to stick to what they believe that people think that classic Bugs was like, that it hinders their ability to make something new or creative, and it just leads to all of the shorts feeling like watered down versions of the original. After this, though, we have Firehouse Frenzy. This is about Porky and Daffy working as 2 firefighters and them getting ready to respond to a fire. This is another fairly solid Porky and Daffy cartoon. It's not the greatest, but it's not the worst. I think the Porky and Daffy ones work a lot better than the Bugs Bunny ones due to the fact that the former doesn't really have a set formula for what the duo has to do in each cartoon, while Bugs Bunny is almost always trying to outsmart some hunter or villain. This probably leads to the crew behind Looney Tunes Cartoons feeling more comfortable handling these characters, as they can make Daffy and Porky basically do whatever they want. This is seen in how each Porky and Daffy cartoon has a completely different setting and story, be that Daffy dealing with Gum, the duo going on an Indiana Jones style treasure hunt, Daffy messing with Porky's construction work, or even the duo just taking a shower, separately. Episode 3 starts off with our first Sylvester and Tweety cartoon, Boo Appa Tweet. This is the best Sylvester and Tweety cartoon out of the bunch, with some pretty funny and original jokes. Granny's redesign does look kind of strange, mostly because it looks so close to her much earlier design, and since so many of the characters look like their later designs, it was strange to see the shorter, more boxier version of Granny. But this one genuinely feels like it could have been one of the classic cartoons. Sylvester and Tweety seem exactly like they should. Also, this one confirms that Granny rides a motorcycle.
I'm off to the market to get some more. You be a good Tweety while I'm gone.
The second cartoon of episode 3 is Bubble Dumb. I just really did not like this one at all. It was just kind of gross, not very funny, and entirely revolves around one gag. It feels like it should have been one of the mid-episode 30-second skits rather than a full 7-minute cartoon. There was maybe one joke that got a slight chuckle out of me, but the rest were just weird or gross. I'm also starting to think the show has some sort of weird deal with skeletons, because this is one of like 3 or 4 times where a character's skeleton comes out of their lifeless skin, and it's just so strange and gross. But this short reminded me a lot of the SpongeBob Gum episode, if y'all remember what I'm talking about. Daffy's by himself in this one, and it seems like this version of Daffy needs a straight man like Porky to make the dynamic work, and in this episode, Daffy's antics are just annoying and not very funny. This is definitely my least favorite cartoon out of all of them, and this is one that I will not rewatch. Starting off episode 4, we have Pain in the Ice. It also starts off with an incredibly suggestive Tweety joke that I really didn't like at all, and I could have gone without hearing that.
I'm going ice skating, Dwanny.
Okay, you have fun. fun, dear.
Thanks, I will. I always have a good time when Duane's not around.
This is another one of the better cartoons. Most of the jokes are funny, and the animation actually seems like it looks better in this short compared to the other ones, mostly because they stay away from the exaggerated faces and movements in favor of an animation style more akin to the classic cartoons. The winter theme in this one also makes it stand out among the other shorts. Overall, this is another pretty great Tweety and Sylvester cartoon, and it seems like these and the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote shorts are the best ones and the ones the new showrunners can handle the best. Speaking of Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, there was a short mid-episode cartoon titled Tunnel Vision. This brings back the classic paint a tunnel on a wall gag. While you may think this joke has been done to death, there is actually a surprisingly funny twist, and I think this is the only one of the mid-episode shorts that stick out to me. And then we have Pool Bunny. Pool Bunny is one of the better Bugs Bunny cartoons, and it feels like the lesser used Bugs Bunny formula where he competes with a rich character just out of being stubborn, like in long-haired hair. There's nothing really to complain about here, it's a pretty solid cartoon. In episode 5 we have Pest Coaster, which is also a pretty good cartoon. This one's about Bugs Bunny attempting to fool Yosemite Sam in order to get on his roller coaster. There's one jetpack and chainsaw gag that's actually really clever, along with the list of rules for the ride. This is one of the situations I was talking about where they can use these characters and not have guns, and it feels perfectly fine. A ride operator at a theme park would not have guns. I'd say this is one of the shorts that kind of represents the median of the quality you'll find in Looney Tunes cartoons, and Warner Brothers also released this one for free on YouTube, so I'd definitely check it out if you're on the fence about watching the show. Secondly, you have Rhino You Don't. This is probably my least favorite of the Sylvester and Tweety shorts. The giraffe gag where he stretches out his neck just made me really uncomfortable. The giant scorpion joke was funny, but it just did not feel like it was supposed to be in Looney Tunes. It felt like it would make more sense in like Teen Titans Go. In episode 6 we have Buzzard School. This one brings back Beaky Buzzard as he's trying to hunt Bugs Bunny in order to make his mom rabbit stew. I actually really enjoyed this one. It felt a lot like a classic Looney Tunes cartoon. One problem is that the jokes weren't as creative as some of the other shorts. It's your basic trains, TNT, getting slapped, but this one felt like it was a lot more full of heart than some of the other shorts. Also, it's cool seeing some more obscure characters like Beaky Buzzard for Bugs to go up against. Buzzard School is followed up by Wet Cement, which is another Porky and Daffy cartoon. It's a pretty basic joke dragged out for like 7 minutes, and it's a lot like the Gum episode. It's just a step above Bubble Dumb because there were at least 2 characters this time. Episode 7 is Siberian Sam. There are some genuinely funny moments, and it's probably one of the better Bugs Bunny cartoons. The guns were an issue here due to it taking place in the past and in Russia, so him using a sickle to hunt bugs makes sense. I also like them bringing back Yosemite Sam changing roles and names, with him being Siberian Sam, a Russian in this short. After that we have Fleece and Dennis. I love seeing Ralph Wolf and Sam Sheepdog in a modern cartoon. It feels refreshing by breaking up all the Bugs Bunny and Daffy and Porky cartoons. The gags are pretty funny and it feels more original in comparison to some of the other cartoons. I do wish it was longer though. It feels like they kind of truncated the short because they didn't really know what else to do with Ralph and Sam because they're more obscure characters. I did like that they also continued the joke of them clocking in and clocking out together and talking to each other like they were work buddies at the water cooler. Episode 8 is Grilled Rabbit. This is also pretty bad. All the jokes consist of them just using over-exaggerated faces rather than funny animation. There was a lamp gag that was kind of funny, but besides that it just felt bland. This feels like they ran out of money and still had to make one more cartoon because it basically takes place on a solid background the entire time. I also think Yosemite Sam would have been a much better fit for this role than Elmer Fudd because Yosemite's hot-headed and can play that kind of bad cop role, while Elmer Fudd's just acting like an idiot in this short. And then we have Shower Shuffle. This cartoon does feel genuinely creative and the gags don't feel like a rehash of the old cartoons. There's a little gross out humor, which I could go without, but it's nothing too bad. Episode 9's Overdue Duck is much better in comparison. Most of the jokes in here are funny, especially the dictionary joke, but some do go on for a little too long. The only major problem was the big muscular poetry guy. His design was horrible, and I know that they needed a big scary guy so it would be funny that he likes poetry, but Looney Tunes has big muscular guys. Why not use the Crusher? He's been in the classic cartoons as well as Back in Action, Duck Dodgers, and the Looney Tunes show. You could also use a character like Nasty Canasta. I just don't understand using poorly designed original characters when you can use classic ones that serve the same purpose while also being a fun Easter egg for longtime Looney Tunes fans. Next up you have Vincent Van Fudd. This one actually feels like it captures the spirit of the original Looney Tunes cartoons, which obviously means it was directed by David Gamil. All the jokes are pretty solid, and this is another example of a good cartoon with an original plot where Elmer doesn't need a gun. I just don't understand why they would have one of the mid-episode shorts be Elmer and Bugs and then immediately go into a full-length Elmer and Bugs short. Ending off the series, we have episode 10, which starts off with hair restoration. This one made me highly uncomfortable as it just involves Elmer Fudd getting his large, bald, sensitive head squashed, stretched, smashed, and all around tortured for 6 minutes. For some reason, I just really did not enjoy seeing this cartoons, but if you can get past this uncomfortableness, then I guess you might enjoy it. I'm not sure. The second short is TNT Trouble. This is another solid Wile E. Coyote cartoon. It's nothing too special, but it's still pretty good. I'm starting to think the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoons are the best in the series, mostly because the crew doesn't have to imitate the voice acting, they don't have to come up with a new story, and they just have to think of a few funny gags. The formula of Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote is one of those if it ain't broke situations, because it's always perfect and all they have to do is just think of new gags instead of putting them in a new setting with new characters and a new story. There are times when just rehashing the old cartoons isn't enough, like with the Bugs Bunny shorts, because in the originals he was always in a different situation. But with Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, they were always in the same situation, so it makes sense for them to be in the same situation in the new series. Finally, we have Plumber's Quack. It's a nice change of pace to see Daffy and Elmer together rather than with Porky and Bugs respectively. It's also nice to see Daffy doing his scams that he used to do in the original cartoons, like claiming he was a salesman. This isn't the best cartoon, but it's definitely a solid end to the series. Overall, Looney Tunes Cartoons is pretty okay. It's not the best Looney Tunes media ever made, but I didn't expect it to be. The original Looney Tunes shorts had some of the most talented voice actors, animators, and writers in animation history, and I don't expect this to live up to the same quality as the originals. On the other hand, reboots of classic cartoons like the new Mickey Mouse series are fantastic. It's not as good as the originals, but it's pretty great for what it is in its own right. Looney Tunes Cartoons doesn't do enough to differentiate itself from the original shorts, and it also doesn't do enough to be as good as the originals. There's a few things they could do to fix the quality of the show by next season, and that's bring in more talented writers to create funnier and more creative gags, let David Gemmell direct more of the shorts, and use different characters to add more variety to the show. This could be like a bunch of other shows, where the crew has to get used to using these new characters, and by the next season they'll be right on target, and it could be fantastic. But as of right now, they're not at that level yet, and that's why I'm giving Looney Tunes Cartoons a 6 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Looney Tunes cartoon short was. There were definitely some good ones, and I'd like to see if you guys agree or disagree with my take on some of the shorts. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming and movie content every Tuesday, along with random reviews throughout the week. See ya.
This is Boomerang from Cartoon Network.